Which musician, hip hop musician right now, is on the top of the food chain, meaning to say that they could go anywhere on the planet and they'll be recognized. Their songs will be recognized, their name will be recognized. And when I start thinking that way, you know what I mean, the only person that comes to mind right now for the last decade is Drake. So then we venture into pop music, right? Who is globally recognized as a top pop artist on the planet? There's two come into mind, all right? The first one is Taylor Swift, and obviously the other one has to be Justin Bieber, right? But then you start comparing those two because they cannot be two champions. They gotta be one, right? When you start looking at Taylor Swift, the beginning of her career, she wasn't even pop. She was actually country, and she morphed and crossed over into pop because she was so popular. So because of that alone, both of them produce the same amount of numbers, probably the same amount of fan base, probably the same amount of global appeal, but Justin has always been pop from day one. So when you talk about pop music, if you had to pick a genre and cross it over between pop and country, it's Taylor Swift. But if we're just doing pop, we gotta do Justin Bieber. Canadian once again. Okay? You know what I mean? Is there an artist bigger than Celine Dion in that particular genre? I don't think so. Canadian. And then on top of that, now you get into other realms and other genres. Is there an artist bigger than Michael Bublé in that particular genre? Canadian. Once again, Tory Lanez, Canadian. Like, you know, I could throw in honorable mentions in there, like Nelly Furtado. You know what I mean? I could throw in individuals like Nickelback. These dudes sold tens of millions of records. And we venture off into other realms, other genres, right? So let's take country, right? Now, when we talk about country, you cannot deny that. Remember, I'm talking about their complete catalog. I'm not talking about a couple of songs here and there. I'm not talking about one or two albums. I'm talking about the complete catalog. You cannot deny the fact that there's not one single person on here in this world has a bigger catalog than Shania Twain. You can't deny that, right? So once again, Shania Twain, Canadian. You know, so much diversity in Canada that, you know, you go to school and you got Indians, you got, you know, Asians, you got Caribbeans, you know, people from the Caribbean, you got Africans, you got Europeans, all amongst the same block. All these individuals, they morph together to create a sound that's global. So when these guys are making music, they're not making music for one specific genre. They're making music for every nationality, because why? They grew up with every nationality. They grew up with every nationality in this world. So that's why they could cross different countries, and they'll have in their music, they'll have a piece of that particular country within that music. You know what I mean? You got individuals like Nelly Furtado. If you listen to Nelly Furtado, she'll have her I believe she's Portuguese, but so she'll have elements about Portuguese culture. You know what I mean? She lived in Toronto. She'll have, you know, Caribbean culture in there too, because when it comes to Canada, the Caribbean is a major influence in Toronto. So she'll have elements in there. You see her rapping. You see her doing, like, hopping on a reggae track. You know what I mean? There'll be no issues with that. You know what I mean? She'll be rapping. You know? So it's interesting how Canadians, the more multicultural you are, it's the more expressive you can be. You know what I mean? The more multicultural experience you experience, it's the more universal you will be in life. And I don't really just take it as music, I take it as individuals, you know what I mean? You understand different cultures, you're able to navigate you're able to pretty much go anywhere and still be comfortable. You're able to go anywhere and still be comfortable. Okay? So Canadians, I think the music industry should take heed to what Canada is about and the culture of Canada. And only then you will realize how diverse this country is.